obviously, like we were mentioning earlier, that how the lore kind of guides things. The lore for Revelations is the reason there's a game.
Yeah,
Um,
is that it? Is in your universe the lore is guiding your game?
so I have two different approaches that kind of meet together on the same. Well, they become the same road.
Right.
So I began with the lore side because that was what I could afford to do.
Mm-hmm.
Developing that and then always wanting to have a miniatures game. But I recognize that there's going to be players or customers, we'll just go from that way, that are
Yeah.
only going to be interested in one of the two boxes. They only want to play the game. They know enough of the lore to kind of understand why they're what the stakes are, but they're still really primarily only there for the game. And then you have other people who are there that are only there for the lore. They might look at the game, they might not be into miniatures, they might not want to paint, so they're only there because they like the story and the setting. And then you'll have others who consume as much as they can on both, and they kind of meets together. So it gives them the why things are fighting, why the nations are there, why they visually are the way they are, kind of thing, and then because they're invested in the lore side. So with me, the lore of Revelations has to work together with the game. I try extremely hard. Um, you know, okay, for example, I grew up. We both played BattleTech a lot.
Right.
BattleTech's novels were different than the game.
Yeah.
Not counting just the sort of stat sheet, you know, uh, uh, lots of rules and all these other things. Um, just the way that weapons worked in the BattleTech lore and the way that they work in the miniatures games that they developed are very different. They don't feel like they're really in the same place sometimes. Um, so I'm trying to do that with Revelations to make them feel very similar to the like if you read about something happening um, in the novels, I want the players to feel like they pretty much have access to do that. Like they feel that the weapons do the same, pretty comparable amount of damage. Um, that
Yeah.
um, the hero doesn't really feel like he has like extensive plot armor. That if he's piloting a spade, for example, and you're like, okay, I've played the miniature game plenty of times. Spades aren't going to survive fighting, 8 goblins from the Union. They're at some point they're going to get worn down. So I try to make them feel like they're on the same ship together. And I think that's easier because I'm the lead author and the lead game developer, so I can make sure that they're married together very easily, or at least with intention easily, versus other lines that have people working in different areas and that may not kind of mesh.
Right. Right. And you're particularly interested in maintaining cohesiveness and believability in your setting. So the fiction needs to feel like the game, and the game needs to feel like the fiction.
Right. Yeah. That's very important to me that they feel close enough that I like the idea that someone could be reading the novels and be like, okay, there's a company of combined forces here. Maybe there's infantry and tanks, and then they can kind of replicate that on the table, and to
Right.
kind of see, well, like if I was doing it, how would I have done it differently, and how would it have turned out? Now, granted, there's environment conditions and other things happening in the stories, but to still kind of have a little bit of um, recreation that feels plausible to what happened in the lore that they can kind of do themselves and experience.
So in terms of recapping, your approach was particularly due to both your background, and you are an author and you are a writer, and in terms of cost effectiveness, you went in with a lore first approach, and the lore basically shapes the direction of your game. Like you said, for example, in the way you designed the orca faction and the mercenaries, you are using the lore to shape the game, and then you want the game and the lore to feel like a cohesive whole, even when people are reading about the action or they are actually playing the action.
Exactly. And, it helps, in my opinion, to have, because mine is so lore focused, that when we're designing a new model, that we run it through the filters of, one, does this feel like Revelations? And
Right.
two, does it feel like it follows the same sort of rules that we've already sort of established for these other factions? Now, when we're doing a new nation like the Faust Union, we kind of start that over, but it's a much easier process for me because I've already done it 3 other times. That now we're doing a fourth one. I can, the sort of design principles kind of just go in a circle, but you still have to put them through those filters. And sometimes different concept artists or different modelers, because they're so excited about their idea, that they try to influence it, and it's not from a controlling, I just want to do what I want, Rick, but it's more of, they're not yet as I've been soaking in this for several years now, so for me it's much easier to kind of hop back in, like, but does this feel like the Republic?
Of
you
course.
know
Yeah.
and they're still kind of new on the outside, depending on how many times they've worked with me, so they're still kind of gaining that process of, okay, this is going to be Rick's way of analyzing, and he's going to poke at it until it gets in the shape that he needs for whatever nation.
And you have the artist's expressiveness, right? And you have your outlook as the main creator and the person that knows the core of what Revelations is. But then you also have the transmission of the ideas. Like, what is the artist receiving? Because art is communication, right? I have like a thought or a feeling or an idea. I put it in an art piece, and then someone that looks at that art might and usually gets some ideas communicated back that might not exactly be 100% what the artist intended. So in this case, obviously the artists that you hire will have their own unique perspective on basically the stuff that they are looking at. And then as a game designer, you have to basically guide them towards exactly what you want to do with it.
Yeah.
Um, in in terms of Black Star, my approach is actually very different, and again, this will be useful for the listeners because I'm an artist, and early on I decided, I'm working on lore, and Black Star is the basis for Black Star is an old Portuguese epic poem where I'm taking specific characters and I'm taking a few situations and the overall feel of it to make Black Star. But I'm not a writer, right? As much as not only does the day only have 24 hours and I can't do everything at once, and you know the feeling, Rick, right?
Yeah.
Um, I know my strong point isn't writing and will never be writing. I can learn the craft, I can improve, but I'm an artist. So I'm going with a visuals focused approach, an art focused approach going into Black Star. Obviously, I think lore is important and the setting is important. And I have the same concern that you have, that I want everything to feel believable and cohesive within each other. So I don't want to have like this guy in a mech in the lore is shooting down seven other mechs, but you can never do that in the game. That heroic moments are okay, but let's not exaggerate things like some of the stuff that is in other fiction. um but again, I'm concerned with, do the mechs look as awesome as they possibly can, because I don't have anything else, right? I don't have infantry, I don't have tanks, I don't have aerospace fighters, I don't have like hero units like Warhammer 40k does. Like you can play with like the Space Marine captain something, and that guy's awesome, and he's as strong as 20 Space Marines or something. I don't have that. So, art focused approach. The game needs to be as good looking as possible to attract people, because that's what I know best how to do. The mechs need to look as awesome as possible, and it doesn't matter basically how much it costs to design them or how long it takes to design them, because it's a game entirely about mechs. The mechs are the centerpiece, and if I can make the mechs as awesome as possible to attract people, uh, everything else will follow. So I have to make sure, both as an artist and as a creator of the game, that the Mechs look are the best thing about the game, and the visuals are the best thing about the game. Um, Going in, because that's the eye candy sells, and that's the first thing people see. People don't feel the rules, or they don't know how to play the game before they actually learn to play it. The first thing they see is the materials, is the key art, and the mechs. So being an artist, that's the approach I'm taking, right? I'm trying to make the entire visual side of the game as awesome as I possibly can, and spending so far most of the money that I have spent on Black Star has been towards art and designing the art and designing the mechs.
Yeah, and go ahead.
No, no, no. Go ahead.
Um, the and for me, I don't consider if you talk to me one on one or like right now, like I don't consider myself a some amazing author. I think where my strength, as I've done this more and more, is in um, like creativity, being able to kind of envision a universe and then kind of expanding upon that. I don't feel like I've done anything that no one else can copy. I'm not so amazing at this that if someone's listening and they want to develop their own game, that they couldn't emulate or achieve what I've achieved. That I don't have almost any artistic abilities in terms of illustrations or concept art. I'm barely good enough to paint. So I've had to work at things. So the when we go into the design process for a new unit, sometimes depending on how many other tasks I'm kind of juggling behind the scenes, whether in my personal life or business, it it's easier or it's more difficult, or if it's the type of design, like we have one mech that we're working on that is a mix of passion project and a mix of this needs to be the coolest thing that this faction has. So it goes through a much stricter process, and there's a lot more notes as opposed to some designs that kind of flow really easily. They just kind of just work, and it just depends on the individual design and what I'm trying to accomplish with it.